It's okay. You don't have to worry anymore. Come on, take my hand. The morning sun poured over Harrison University like liquid gold, draping the old brick buildings in soft light. Families filled the campus courtyard, laughing, embracing, snapping photos that would live on refrigerator doors and phone screens for years. Balloons bobbed above heads, bouquets exchanged hands, and the air buzzed with joy and relief. But Sarah Mitchell sat alone on the concrete steps outside the main hall, her graduation gown gathered around her knees, her worn-out ballet flats clutched tightly in her lap. The left sole had given up that morning, just hours before the biggest moment of her life. After 4 years of walking everywhere, serving coffee at dawn, studying until her vision blurred, and surviving on instant noodles, her shoes had chosen this day to surrender. She stared down at her bare feet, the cold concrete biting against her skin. The laughter around her blurred into a distant hum. Her chest tightened, and she whispered to herself, "Not today, please. Not today." "Excuse me, are you all right?" The voice was calm, kind, the kind that made you look up even when you didn't want to be seen. Sarah raised her eyes and found a man crouching beside her. He was in his late 30s, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her semester's textbooks. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his brown eyes carried something rare, genuine concern. "I'm fine," Sarah said quickly, reflexively, the way poor people learn to say when they're anything but fine. The man glanced at the broken shoe in her hands, then at her bare feet, then back at her face. He'd move away. Most people would have. Instead, he quietly said, "My name's Daniel, Daniel Foster, and you don't look fine." Something in his voice, the warmth, the patience, cracked something inside her that had been held together for far too long. Maybe it was the exhaustion, the loneliness, or the thought of walking across that graduation stage barefoot, while everyone else wore pride and privilege. Whatever it was, she found herself speaking before her mind could stop her. "I know this sounds crazy," she murmured, half laughing, half crying. "But would you happen to have an extra pair of shoes I could borrow? Just for the ceremony. I'd give them right back." She expected him to laugh or excuse himself politely. Instead, Daniel did something unexpected. He sat down beside her on the cold concrete, not caring about his expensive suit. "Tell me your story," he said softly. And so she did. She told him about losing her parents in a car accident when she was 17, about how her grandmother took her in and raised her until 2 years ago when illness took her too. She spoke of the early mornings at Betty's Diner, starting shift at 5 a.m. before rushing to class, of the scholarship that covered tuition but left nothing for living expenses, and the countless nights she ate ramen or skipped meals altogether just to make rent. Her voice trembled, but there was pride, too. "I made it, though," she said with a faint smile. "Graduated with honors in business administration. I'm the first in my family to ever get a college degree." Daniel listened silently, his eyes never leaving hers. When she finished, there was a long pause, a silence filled not with pity, but understanding. "My shoes won't fit you," he finally said. Sarah's heart sank. Of course they wouldn't. Why had she even asked? But before she could respond, he stood up, brushed off his suit, and said, "Wait here. I have a better idea." He walked toward the parking lot. Sarah watched him go, fully expecting him to get into his car and drive away, another moment of brief compassion fading into memory. But instead, Daniel pulled out his phone and made a call. 15 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up. A woman stepped out, carrying 3 crisp white boxes, each bearing the logo of an upscale department store. Daniel thanked her, then returned to Sarah, setting the boxes in front of her. "Pick whichever pair you like," he said. "They're yours to keep." Sarah blinked at the boxes, as though they were glowing. I can't accept these," she stammered. "I don't even know you." "Then let me tell you about myself," Daniel said, sitting down beside her again. 20 years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are. Different school, same broken shoes, same empty wallet. Sarah looked up at him in disbelief. "I grew up in foster care," he continued. 7 homes before I turned 16. Nobody thought I'd finish high school, let alone go to college. But one teacher, Mrs. Chin, believed in me. She bought me a suit for my college interviews, paid my application fees out of her own pocket. She saw something in me that I didn't yet see in myself. He nodded toward the graduation hall, where students in caps and gowns gathered like a sea of dreams waiting to be realized. She told me something I never forgot, Daniel said, his voice low. She said, "Daniel, success isn't about how high you climb. It's about how many people you bring up with you." Those words changed my life. Sarah swallowed hard. "What do you do now?" He smiled, the kind of smile that carried both pride and humility. "I run a company that develops affordable housing and community programs. But that's not important right now. What matters is that you walk across that stage today, proud of what you fought for." Sarah hesitated before opening the first box. Inside were elegant black heels, simple, professional, perfect. She touched them gently, still unable to believe what was happening. "I still can't just take these," she said, shaking her head. "It doesn't feel right." "You're not taking them," Daniel said gently. "You're accepting them. There's a difference. One day, when you're in a position to do the same for someone else, you will. That's how we make the world a little better." Sarah slipped the shoes on. They fit perfectly, almost as if they'd been waiting for her. She stood slowly, her shoulders straightening, her heartbeat steadying. For the first time that day, she felt like she belonged among the laughter and the gowns and the celebration. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to repay you." Daniel stood too, slipping a sleek business card from his pocket and handing it to her. "There's no debt here, Sarah. But if you really want to thank me, come see me after graduation. My company has a management trainee position opening next month. With your grades and your work ethic, I think you'd be perfect for it." Sarah looked down at the card. Foster Development Corporation. Daniel Foster, CEO. Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "I don't joke about potential," he said with a smile. "I see in you what Mrs. Chin saw in me all those years ago. Someone who understands what struggle teaches. Someone who knows that real success isn't about the money you make, but the lives you touch." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't from despair anymore. They were from hope, bright, fragile hope blooming after years of survival. "Now go," Daniel said softly, his voice full of warmth. "Your grandmother and parents would be so proud of you today. Don't keep them waiting." Sarah took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and walked toward the graduation hall. The new shoes clicked softly on the pavement, echoing like a rhythm of new beginnings. Halfway there, she turned back. Daniel was still standing by the steps, hands in his pockets, watching her with a quiet smile. She waved. He waved back. The cheers of the crowd swelled as Sarah entered the hall. Rows of families filled the bleachers, waving signs and shouting names. The air smelled faintly of flowers, paper programs, and polished wood, the scent of new beginnings. Her name was called near the end. Sarah Mitchell, Bachelor of Business Administration, summa cum laude. As she walked across the stage, the black heels Daniel had given her tapped steadily against the floor, each click echoing her years of perseverance. The dean handed her the diploma, and in that moment, all the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the loneliness, every hardship, folded into a single breath of victory. She looked toward the back of the hall and saw Daniel standing near the exit. He wasn't clapping wildly or drawing attention, just standing there, smiling with quiet pride. Sarah smiled back through her tears. When the ceremony ended, she found him waiting near the steps. He extended his hand. "Congratulations, Miss Mitchell. You did it." "I wouldn't have," she said, her voice breaking, "if not for you." Daniel shook his head. "No, Sarah, you would have done it anyway. You just needed someone to remind you that you could." That day, Sarah went home with a diploma in one hand and Daniel's card in the other. She slipped it into her wallet beside a photograph of her grandmother. The gold-embossed letters seemed to whisper a promise. A door was opening. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the lobby of Foster Development Corporation, her heart pounding. The building was sleek and modern, marble floors, glass walls, sunlight flooding in from every direction. But what caught her attention wasn't the grandeur. It was the way employees greeted each other. Genuine smiles, not forced ones. There was warmth here. When she stepped into Daniel's office, he was reviewing a set of blueprints. He looked up, smiled, and said, "Right on time. I was beginning to wonder if you'd show." "I said I'd come," she replied, trying to sound confident even though her knees trembled. He gestured to a chair. "Then welcome aboard. You'll start as a management trainee. It's hard work, long hours, but something tells me you're no stranger to that." She smiled faintly. "No, sir." "Good. And one more thing, call me Daniel." From that day forward, Sarah threw herself into the job. She learned quickly, stayed late, and asked questions until she understood every detail. Her co-workers respected her dedication, but few knew the story behind it. The girl who had walked barefoot on her graduation day and found kindness where she least expected it. Months turned into years. Sarah rose through the ranks, first as project coordinator, then as assistant manager, and eventually director of community programs. Under her supervision, Foster Development launched projects that transformed struggling neighborhoods, affordable housing, youth scholarships, small business grants. She often found herself quoting Daniel's mentor, Mrs. Chin, "Success isn't about how high you climb. It's about how many people you bring up with you." Each time she said it, she remembered that day on the concrete steps, the broken shoes, the man who had stopped when everyone else had walked by. 5 years later, Sarah sat in her office overlooking the city skyline. A framed photo of her graduation day sat on the shelf. The diploma, her proud smile, and those black heels peeking beneath her gown. Next to it was Daniel's original business card, now slightly faded from time. A knock came on her door. Her assistant, Leah, peeked in. "There's a young man in the parking lot," she said. "His car broke down. He looks, well, like he's having a rough day. I was going to call him a tow, but he said he can't afford it." Sarah stood immediately. "Where is he?" Minutes later, she found him leaning against an old sedan, head in his hands. He looked barely 20, nervous, desperate, clutching a folder of papers. "Hey," she said gently. "Rough day?" He looked up, startled. Yeah. I was on my way to a job interview downtown. My car just died. I don't have money for a tow or a bus, and I don't even know what to do anymore." Sarah smiled softly. The scene was achingly familiar. "Come on, let's call you a tow truck. I'll cover it." "I can't let you do that," he said quickly, embarrassed. "You don't even know me." Those words hit her like a whisper from the past. She could almost hear Daniel's voice again, saying the same thing to her all those years ago. "That's okay," she said, pulling out her phone. "Someone once told me that knowing someone isn't a requirement for kindness." Within minutes, a tow truck arrived. As they loaded his car, she handed him a folded bill for a taxi and one of her own business cards. "Come see me tomorrow," she said. "We might have a position that's perfect for you." He stared at the card, reading aloud, "Sarah Mitchell, Director, Foster Development Corporation." His voice trembled. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance," Sarah replied. "What you do with it is up to you." He blinked rapidly, tried to hold back tears. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Sarah smiled, her eyes glistening. "Because someone once told me that success isn't about how high you climb. It's about how many people you bring up with you." The young man nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Sarah reached out her hand, the same way Daniel once had. "It's okay. You don't have to worry anymore. Come on, take my hand." He did. That evening, as Sarah returned to her office, the city lights began to glow against the dusk. She sat by the window, thinking about how life had come full circle, from a girl sitting barefoot on a concrete step to a woman offering her hand to someone else. The cycle of kindness had continued, exactly as it should. On her desk sat a framed letter from Daniel, sent the year she'd been promoted. "Sarah, you remind me of myself, but braver. Remember what Mrs. Chin told me. Measure your success not by titles or wealth, but by the lives that rise because of you. I know you'll keep that promise alive. Daniel Foster." She smiled softly, brushing a tear from her cheek. The shoes from that day were still in her closet, scuffed, worn, but precious. Not because they were expensive, but because they carried the story of how one act of compassion could echo through time. Sarah knew the world could be harsh, unfair even, but moments like that prove that kindness still existed, hidden in the ordinary days, waiting to be passed on. And somewhere, perhaps in another city, another student might be sitting barefoot, on the edge of giving up, waiting for someone to stop, listen, and offer not just help, but hope. If this story touched your heart, remember, kindness multiplies when shared. Because sometimes the smallest gesture, a pair of shoes, a ride, a hand extended, can build bridges that last a lifetime. And long after diplomas fade and careers move on, what truly endures is this simple truth. Sparkle success isn't about how high you climb. It's about how many people you bring up with you. Sparkles,